At the 2010 NAMM show, and we're talking with Rick Latham. Rick's got a new DVD coming out, the All About the Groove, but this is a 5-hour set that they shot at Drum Channel. It's a beautiful video. But we're talking to Rick because we're working on the groove issue, and so we have some questions for you, Rick, about groove, playing groove, thinking about how you play groove.
Sure. Great, Phil. Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. All the readers of drum and guys that have used my books and videos over the year, I really appreciate that. So,
let me ask you this then. When we talk about rhythm and blues, blues, jazz, funk, R&B, we're talking about music that is built on the bass and drums. Some pop music is really all about the melody and the higher pitched instruments. As a drummer, what are you trying to, you talked about how you mesh with the band. How do you mesh with that bass player, and how do you listen when you're playing?
Yeah, that's another thing. That's the bottom. That's the foundation. It's like building a house. If there's not a strong foundation, the house is going to fall in. So, the bass and the drums have to work together and mesh and have to be, again, in the same vibe, in the same groove. The weight of a bass note, the length of a bass note, all this stuff is important to bass players. If two bass players played boom, 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 if 10 different bass players played that, it'd probably sound 10 different ways. But as a drummer, the same thing kind of has to happen with drumming. If you play boom, pop, boom, boom, pop, boom, boom, pop, and you kind of have an attitude like boom, pop, boom, boom, pop. That I know it's very kind of ethereal and in concept, but still you can make those notes seem longer or bigger with the attitude that you give it, with the rim shot, hitting in the middle of the snare drum, a thick note, a thin note, hi-hat, tip, shoulder. All this stuff is important. So playing with that bass player, figure out how he's going to phrase with him, very important.
So unless it's notated really well, groove doesn't show up in the notation.
It's never in the notation. A lot of times they write a lot of grooves out, but it may not be a groove. You know what I'm saying?
So here at the show, we saw Bernard Purdie playing. He is, for a lot of people, the ultimate in groove. But who else really influenced you, or just name 2 or 3 people that you really love and think people ought to listen to?
Well, coming from my generation, I've been playing for 40 years, so of course Buddy Rich was a huge influence, and that's more of a swing kind of pulse. And but Buddy had a great feel. His feel was great, loose, killer. He could play very up tempos, but could very open too. His technique, his hand technique, his snare drum chops were incredible. But Steve Gadd too. Steve was such a huge influence on me. He exudes that feeling also. Steve, Bernard, guys like that, Buddy, Louie, Ed Shaughnessy, great feel. Those guys can hit a drum one time, just one note, and you can get some kind of feeling from it. It's not just a stroke. It's a groove immediately.
One thing Steve is incredible at is playing slow grooves, slow shuffles, and that's challenging for a musician. Why don't you just talk about when you're playing slow, working on the pulse? Is there a mental way that you approach that?
Well, he mentions this stuff too, subdividing. When you're playing a slow groove, like a blues groove, like you said, doom, doom, da, doom, doom, da, a groove like that, 12/8, or either a blues shuffle, kind of thing too. But thinking, shuffles are built on triplets, so thinking those triplets internally, subdividing and keeping that rolling triplet thing happening, and having a good solid quarter note pulse too is very important. So subdivision and thinking things in between the notes, the space in between the notes sometimes is where the groove is. So it's not so much that you're thinking, that it's, notice when I was doing it before, it was like, and not, so there's a difference, and you can bring that across, you can get that across with your playing, with touch, his touch is incredible too. The touch of the cymbal, the touch of the snare drum, touch of the bass drum, all these things.
So even if the time is pretty straight, you're swinging it internally.
Yeah,
And that gives it groove.
exactly. A lot of times, just like eighth notes, 16th notes, whatever you're playing, the accent configuration too could have a lot to do with it. Where you're playing, 16, or playing swinging more of a dotted feel. It's got to be relaxed, and that's one thing I think is the main thing, to stay relaxed with a groove, any groove. Even if you're playing fast, it's very difficult to play fast when you're tense. So if you can stay relaxed, and that's what I work with a lot of guys on, just being relaxed. Be relaxed, shoulders relaxed. A lot of guys play very tense. The more relaxed you are, the wider that groove is going to sound. It's going to feel more comfortable and wider and not as tense. So relaxation is a huge key.
Great. We've been talking with Rick Latham, and be sure to check out the All About the Groove DVD, 5 hours of funky drumming. Thanks.